Hello, listeners. Welcome to the next episode of Courage Talks. Special guest today is Dhruv Agarwalla, an industry veteran, alumni of Northwestern, Stanford, Harvard, worked at big companies like GE, started startups like Prop Tiger. And if that was not enough, he's had a phenomenal journey as a angel investor, part of multiple VC funds. He has an amazing health journey of his own, which now has translated into his latest venture in nutrition. So there's a lot to unwrap. Welcome, Dhruv.
Thanks, Hetal. I'm really delighted to be on your show. I know it's been a long time coming. We've been chatting, so I'm really glad to be here, and hopefully we can have a very engaging conversation.
Absolutely. So the topic is Courage Talks. The story behind the topic is my book Against All Odds, which was my father's biography. And when I was going through my father's journey, I realized there were a lot of subtle moments of courage in his just about ordinary life that were great examples of courage. And I started trying to discover courage in other people's lives. So, what does courage mean to you?
So, Hetal, is very interesting. You ask that question. I think, for me, my overarching philosophy in how I deal with situations, I think actually stems from, I'm not a very religious person, but stems from the Bhagavad Gita. I'm sure everyone knows the most famous sort of verse from there, which is at chapter 2, verse 47, which basically says that, as a human being, you only have right to your action.
Yeah.
You don't have any right to the fruits of that action, and that whatever action you take should not be, in search of the fruits,
Yeah.
and neither should that detachment lead to inaction. Right.
Very
So that sort of is my sort of overarching philosophy in terms of, how I take decisions
Yeah.
and what allows me to sometimes do things which might appear tough, but
Right.
in reality, it's not. For me, it's like, okay, it's the right thing to do at the right time.
Yeah.
And for me, if that's how I see it, then I go ahead and do it.
Right.
Always with the realization that the only thing which I can do is control the controllables, things in my own hand. What
Yeah.
I cannot absolutely do is control the uncontrollables. And I
Yeah.
think most of the time when people get fearful and get sort of paralyzed into inaction
Yeah.
is when they start looking at a situation in a very complicated manner, and more often than not they get distracted by the uncontrollables, not realizing that you
Yeah.
can't do anything anyways, so just focus on what you can do and
Yeah.
do it well and do it right. So that's sort of how I've dealt with situations, and therefore never really had to be too fearful about things, because that's how I lead my life.
That's true. Very well said. Any role model for courage? I know you had lots of ups and downs, but someone who inspired you the earliest or the most.
I would say that's always been my dad. My dad's 80 right now, and even at 80, he's trying to do a new project. So that is something which has always inspired me. I've always seen him do new things, never afraid to fail. He always used to tell me that, Dhruv, at worst, what's going to happen? We all came with nothing, we'll all go with nothing. So it'll be a zero. It's not going to be a negative, right?
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to try anything.
Yeah.
And the second thing, which I think also, brings courage in a certain way, is I think having a very strong value system and moral compass. So
Yeah.
his point was never do wrong to anyone, never hurt anyone, never take more than what is your fair share. And as long as you're doing the right thing, you can sleep well at night. Pretty much you can conquer anything. I think that's always been a big sort of guiding light for me.
Yeah.
And I take sort of inspiration from his journey,
Yeah.
where pretty much, his 80 years of his life, he's been well regarded, well loved by all the people he's touched, and continues to sort of forge ahead even at 80. So, which
Wow.
is why when people ask me, why are you doing a new venture at 50, 56?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm still a spring chicken in comparison to my dad. So why should I not do something?
Wow. Very wonderful. So a lot of us know what you are today, right? A phenomenal set of accomplishment, but not many might know your background, where you came from, your childhood days. So why don't you just take us down memory lane? What was Dhruv as a child like? Some of the most innocent or the most naughtiest versions of you that you have a faint memory of.
Yeah. So look, I grew up in Calcutta, and small family. My parents and my sister and me. I was the younger one. But despite being sort of a nuclear family amongst the four of us, I lived in this large household. I would not say household, like large complex.
Yeah.
Where we had about, I would say, about 17 or 18 dwelling units or apartments. But
Mm-hmm.
everybody in there was, a cousin, either a first cousin or a second cousin or a chacha or a tauji, as we call it.
Right.
So we grew up in this environment where, we always had a ready-made cricket team and would take on challenges from the neighbors because it was called the Agarwala cricket team. It was a very, I would say, safe childhood
Mm-hmm.
because, you could walk out of your apartment and go to another apartment, eat your meal there, hang out there, and you knew that your parents wouldn't be worried because they
Yeah.
knew we were safe. So in that sense, a very secure and safe childhood,
Yeah.
which I think, matters a lot as you grow up, because some of the inherent fears as a child can determine who you are as an adult and how you behave.
Yeah.
I was not a very outgoing kid, bit reserved, bit of
Yeah.
an introvert, which I would like to say I'm still, because I do meet people. But I always tell people that the definition of an extrovert
Yeah.
is people who actually look forward to meeting new people. I'm someone who does not. If
Okay.
I'm in a situation where I'm meeting someone new, I'm perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But that's not what energizes me, or I'm not something which I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
I was always a quiet child, academically inclined. Plus, I would play a lot of sports.
Yeah.
Never excelled, but
Mm-hmm.
still was always out there playing, which I think still is one of those things which really kind of impacted me mentally when I became overweight.
Yeah.
Because I just could not play a sport. When you're like 150 kilos, it's almost impossible to do that. But now that I'm back, to being, of normal weight, still do enjoy playing a new sport if I can, be it, paddle, be it pickleball, all the stuff, which is becoming popular these days.
Yeah.
But I never would hesitate to go out and try something, even if I wasn't great at it. So
Mm.
yeah, so that sort of, in a nutshell, captures my childhood. Of course, once I finished school, I went overseas,
Yeah.
for college education. But yeah, I mean, some really fond memories of growing up in Kolkata
Yeah.
and, being a foodie, no better city than that to grow up in and to go back to.
Very true. Growing up, you had a particular ambition which was diverse from what you are today.
It's interesting because I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My dad was an entrepreneur. My paternal grandfather and his brothers, they were all, entrepreneurs, some running very big businesses.
Yeah.
Similarly, on my mother's side, my uncles, my maternal grandfather, and, the broader family on their side,
Yeah.
all business people. So I think dinner table conversations used to revolve around what's going on in the business, what's working well, what's not working well. Sometimes I felt a lot of information was being shared, and without sort of having the full context,
Yeah.
would worry you sometimes. And look, is all okay? Are we
Yeah.
going to be okay as a family? Because it doesn't seem that the business is going really well, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that also kind of gave me a sense that business is tumultuous. It's not like a linear progression. Good things happen, a few times, bad things happen. You just got to keep, plowing ahead and plugging away at it. So I
Mhm.
think growing up, I always felt that I, wanted to be an entrepreneur myself, because there was a very high bar set on both sides. And I said that, look, I couldn't do that myself. But I also at the same time had a very independent streak, and I never felt that I would join my dad's business. While I said that, he's been an inspiration, especially his values, moral
Yeah.
compass, all something very inspiring for me. But we think very differently in many other ways. And I felt that, if we work together, it
Yeah.
would probably be like a tinderbox, right? And, we're not just not going to get along and we're going to fight. So I
Yeah.
said, whatever I do, it's got to be independent but entrepreneurial, because that's what I kind of knew best, growing
Yeah.
up. That's what I was exposed to.
What I noticed about your profile was you decided to do an MSc after your undergrad, and you didn't straight away jump into the world of MBA, which would have been a natural progression from your entrepreneurial dreams perspective. What was going on in your mind that time?
As I said, I was academically inclined. I was a good student. I did very well, as an undergrad. And I basically, did a lot of research work as an undergrad, material science and engineering. And I really, loved the subject. And a lot of my professors encouraged me to do a PhD. So I applied actually to three schools. I applied back to Northwestern where I was, Stanford and
Yeah.
MIT, got into all three, and all three with sort of, fully paid for. So I didn't have to pay for it. I had a Stanford University fellowship. So I said, look, I'm going to give it a shot and go get my PhD. Like, no downside. Wasn't thinking too much about where it would lead. And I said,
Yeah.
look, at some point you could always, run a business. Business
Yeah.
is not hard, right? In the sense, you don't need a degree to start it.
Yeah.
So, and I said, if you don't do your PhD now, you'll probably never do it. So
Yeah.
I went for it, but very quickly realized that I'm just not cut out to be in the lab for years. It was a commitment of at least 5 to 6 years.
Yeah.
It would have meant being in the lab for long hours. And, unless you truly loved it and enjoyed it, I think it wouldn't work. So I decided to leave after a year with my master's degree.
Yeah.
Because I was in a fellowship, I could take more classes every quarter. But
Mhm.
just decided to fast track the masters, took my
Okay.
master, and then I left.
What was the area of research that you were interested in, if I may?
So basically, as an undergrad, I was working on superconducting materials, sort of the manufacturing and the production of that.
Yeah.
Manufacturing production is the wrong word, synthesis of that. And then at the graduate level, it was more on the mechanical properties of semiconductor materials.
Right.
That was the area which I had thought I would work on with the professor. But because it's very different, because Northwestern had a very different focus. So
Yeah.
superconductors, a lot of professors specializing in metallurgy, etc.
Yeah.
Stanford was a lot about semiconductors. So,
Yeah.
but because it was material science, so there was one thing which I did as an undergrad, but a very different area at the grad school level. But
Yeah.
I never really did anything at the grad school level because I did all my coursework in a year. And
Yeah.
then just when I signed up with the professor is when I decided that, okay, you know what, it's time to leave. So actually I didn't leave. I took
Yeah.
a sabbatical for 2 years, but never went back.
Okay. Pretty hot and happening area from today's day and age perspective. So, any guilty pangs of having left the techie tag?
I do have it occasionally, because think about it, right? I mean, I was at Stanford in
Yeah.
the Valley. Could have done my PhD there.
Yeah.
In
Literally
the area.
stones throw away from NVIDIA.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know. A lot of my friends are doing extremely well, who've stayed on in the Valley. But I always feel that at the end of the day, success sometimes should not be measured
Mhm.
in terms of just sort of the number of zeros you have in your bank account. I mean, unfortunately, that's
Very
the way
true.
the world works.
Very true.
But I believe that that's a very futile exercise, because somebody, you're going to find at least someone, and more than someone, who's got more zeros, right?
Oh yeah, that's true.
So that if you play that game, you're never going to be happy. So I think I'm fairly comfortable with where I am, happy about it. In my early days as an entrepreneur, I don't think I spent enough time with my kids, but I think I made up for it a little bit after I sold my company. Also, it sort of coincided with my health transformation also at that point in time.
Right.
And philosophically, I started thinking differently, and we can talk more about it as we speak. But I think, the fact that I could spend more time with my kids and everything else,
Yeah.
I think is far more valuable than, as I said, maybe having stayed on in the Valley and
Yeah.
done something else. But I'm pretty happy with what I've done already.
Very true. Very true. And after your MBA, got into GE, an organization which is reputed for its longevity and sort of an archaic or tough culture. Any instances with you from your GE days? Any difficult moments? Any tough decisions that you had to make?
Look, GE for me was an amazing experience. I was there for about 5 years. And I don't know what they did, frankly, as an organization. Look, when I joined, it had been ranked as the most admired company for 3 years in a row. Welch had been the most admired CEO. I joined in 2002, July, I think June or July. And so Jeff Immelt had just been there for 8 or 9 months, because he had joined in September 2001.
Yeah.
But it was an amazing company. The second highest market cap in the world that time. It always used to have the highest market cap. But then that time, because of 9/11 and everything else, oil prices had gone through the roof, and ExxonMobil had the highest market cap, but GE was always there. So it was really an amazing company, not the GE you kind of talk about today, right? But I don't know what they did right, but instantly I joined the company, and I felt that, look, this is a place I want to spend all my life. Wow. One company which did a fantastic job of creating that sort of culture which was so prevalent that it truly was built in water cooler conversation. People took pride in how hard they worked. Sometimes in today's context, you can say it wasn't the right thing. People would say, what, I've not taken a holiday for so many days or whatever, right? But it was all about the passion for the company and doing well. So the large company, you knew in order to succeed,
Yeah.
you had to kind of really distinguish yourself.
Yeah.
And even that didn't mean that, you would be successful, because as they always used to say at GE, that not only do you have to work hard to stand out, but then from the top, you need someone to take notice who puts their hand out to pull you up. So it's a
Yeah.
combination of both,
Be a
right?
father figure around.
Exactly. So, but look, I joined GE and I felt that, this was a company I wanted to stay all my life, because
Yeah.
that's what I said. They did that so well that everyone wanted that. Everyone wanted to do well, succeed. And honestly, I was there for close to 5 years. And I think the amount I learned there
Yeah.
was far more than what I learned, in my Harvard MBA. And those are some of the best years, of my life when I look back, and many
Yeah.
lessons learned in that company. I was very fortunate to have that sort of father figure who, as you described,
Yeah.
who kind of put his hand out to pull me up. And I still am in touch with him. He's done exceedingly well in life. A person called
Yeah.
Bill Woodburn, and then his head of HR called Reno Piazzolla. Two
Yeah.
people who kind of taught me a lot of lessons and who really took care of me at GE.
Mhm.
And which is why I landed up in India as the
Yeah.
CEO for GE's infrastructure business. I
Right.
would squarely, say that it was Reno and Bill who kind of ensured that there were enough people out there as diligent, as smart, as competent, as deserving as I was. But I got the role, and I think it was largely due to that. I think that was, as I said, an amazing experience. One big lesson I remember Bill taught me, and the reason I'm sharing it is because I think it's valuable for younger people.
Yeah.
I remember once I actually got like a, you know, 15 or 16% raise. I can't remember, right?
Mhm.
And I was really unhappy. So I went to Bill. I said, Bill, 15% raise. And I wasn't like, highly paid or anything.
Yeah.
He said, look, that's the highest increase I've ever given to anyone in my life. Typically it's like 7 or 8%. So 16%
That's
means
so typical in the US, right? I think people in India tend to get spoiled, and they would. I'm sure majority of people in India would look down on it.
exactly. So, and then he said something which I think is really, really valuable. He said that, Dhruv, I just want you to remember one thing.
Uh-huh.
He said that in your life, just make sure about one thing in your career,
Yeah.
that your pay is always a little below your ability, right? And that your designation is always a little bit below your ability. Because when things go wrong, guess
Yeah.
what? People who are overpaid or are not suitable for their position are the ones who get fired first, right? If you're always slightly underpaid, or slightly below in terms of what your capacity is, you'll always go up, because when time
Yeah.
comes to find
Mhm.
someone, they'll say, oh, you know what, this guy's the right guy. Because companies
Yeah.
always look for competent people, but at the same time they have budgets, they don't want to pay
Yeah.
overpay.
Yeah.
So I think that lesson stuck with me,
Yeah.
that don't be greedy in terms of salary. Don't be greedy in terms of designation. Keep doing well. And this was before I got chosen. This was maybe a year before, a year and a half before I got chosen for my role
Yeah.
to lead GE's business in India.
Yeah.
For me, it was a great lesson that just keep doing again. Back to the whole Gita example I gave. Keep
Yeah.
doing what you have to do. Keep doing the right thing. And
Yeah.
ultimately, good things will happen. But if
Great.
you're constantly focused on how much you're getting in terms of a salary, what your designation is, I think it's counterproductive. So that
Yeah.
was a big, big, big lesson learned, from Bill, which I still value and which I still share with younger people.
I reflect on the transition that you made. I mean, you went to US as a young kid, and spent almost a decade or more. Must have been a tough decision, right? Considering the fact that you had things going so well for you at GE. Was it a big compromise you were making, or you had bigger plans, or you wanted to be home?
Look, I think it was a combination of things, Hetal. I think if you look at it, I'm just trying to remember, when I moved back, I think it was around 94, 95. And, we had just had our second baby.
Okay.
So and so my daughter was 3, my son had just been born. So my
Mhm.
wife was that, look, moving back to India would really be helpful, because you'll get help, and,
Yeah.
raising kids in India is easier, right? Because you
Yeah.
truly have that
The system is there for you.
village, which helps raise the child, right?
Yeah.
Which you don't have in the US.
Yeah.
So I think that was one sort of driving factor.
Yeah.
Second is that, Bill had really carved that role out for me. And, you don't say no,
Yeah.
right? You do it, because you know that if that he's going to take care of you ultimately, right? You do it. And third thing I said that, look, I mean, it's not going back to India in a role which is, not meaningful, or it's sort of a relatively junior role. It was, CEO of a business, working very closely with, the CEO of a business who actually reported to Jeff Immelt. So,
Yeah.
you know what, you really can't go wrong. So that's sort of, which gave me the impetus to make the leap. Obviously, there was some hesitation.
Yeah.
So Bill said, look, why don't you explore roles in the US with the other businesses division and see if you prefer that.
Yeah.
My suggestion is you do this, but
Yeah.
think about it. So the good part was I had choices and options, which made life a lot easier.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, for the various reasons I mentioned, because of the two sort of young ones, the fact that I didn't want to say no to Bill, but at the end of the day, a CEO role, and for the salary I was getting paid, it would also be very comfortable, being in India as opposed to the US.
Yeah.
So I think all those things, factored in, and I made the leap, and which I don't regret actually.
Got it. If that was not the big risk, then you decided to give up your comfortable career in G and move into finance.
Yeah. So look, that's actually a very interesting story, Hetal. So
Mm-hmm.
when I moved back to India,
Yeah.
around that time, a friend of mine or a classmate of mine from business school, Karthik Verma. So Karthik was a Delhi boy and, had gone to the UK and then spent time there, in financial services. And then he was my classmate at business school, knew him really well. He wanted to do something, entrepreneurial. And he used to call me all the time and seek my counsel on, hey Dhruv, I'm thinking of this idea, what do you think, etc. So bouncing sort of ideas off me,
Yeah.
and most of them centered around starting a business in India.
Yeah.
So I said, Karthik, you keep calling me and keep bothering me and asking me about doing a business in India. I said, why don't you move here? I mean, you got to literally, give up the comfort of a nice life in London. He really loves London. Even now, he's
Yeah.
back there, and you got to move here. And that's when I'm going to brainstorm with you. Otherwise, I know that this is just sort of theoretical gyan, because
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Right.
call me, you take my input, you
Work
call
it out.
me after another 2 weeks, but you're not on the ground, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, to his credit, he took that advice from me, packed his bags, gave up his job and
Mm-hmm.
moved to India. I thought there was a big commitment, and it didn't take much for me. Once I kind of really told him that, he took it to heart and came. And that's when he said that, hey, look, why don't we do something together, blah, blah, blah. And I said, look, let's brainstorm. So I remember we would get together every weekend, in literally in his, I don't want to make it sound like dramatic, but in his basement. And his father, is a lawyer, so you have the basement offices, right? So we would spend time there and brainstorm on ideas. But interesting thing is, when people look at starting up ideas, we did it in a very business school like fashion. So
Yeah.
we said that, if we are going to, because the tech boom had happened,
Yeah.
crashed, and things were sort of, coming back, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Slowly. So we said, if we don't build a business now, when are we going to do it? Do we want to look ourselves in the mirror 10 years from today
Yeah.
and say that, look, we could have done it and we didn't? So that was to your point about courage, right? That's how we kind of rationalize doing a startup.
Yeah.
We said, you know what, this is it. We are young still.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was around 2005, 6 when I started brainstorming. So I was 35, 36. He was a couple of years younger. We said, if we don't do it now, when? But we went about it in a very consulting-like manner, looked at, different spaces, market sizes, etc.,
Yeah.
and said, okay, what, we'll do financial services. It's a big space. There is plenty of money to be made. We went into that space. Again, spoke to a lot of people we knew.
Yeah.
In fact, by then, my sort of HR head from GE Reno,
Yeah.
who I spoke about earlier, he had moved to UniCredit as the head of HR for UniCredit globally, which is a big job.
Yeah.
So he helped us a lot, introduced us to folks at UniCredit in Italy, met with a lot of people to kind of really figure out the business idea, financial planning, and then distribution of different financial products. Big business in Australia, big business in Europe. And we thought there was an opportunity here, because in India at that time, most financial services were sold by banks. They had sort of a big incentive to mis-sell, because those relationship managers, quote unquote, had targets. At the end of the month, they would try and push high load products like ULIPs, which are not necessarily good for customers,
Yeah.
or try and churn mutual funds just to make money.
Yeah.
We felt that was not the right thing, and you could actually create a high trust business where you would do the right thing by the consumer. That was sort of the genesis of that financial services venture.
Got it. Got it. And then when did you decide to migrate to fintech? And when you started Prop Tiger way back in 2011, I think the real estate market per se was a difficult space to get into, right? Highly unorganized, very difficult for a startup to emerge, right? I mean, if you're a big brand.
It's very interesting. So, we started iTrust, which was the fintech business in 2006.
Yeah.
We raised capital from SoftBank. We raised capital from some marquee angel investors. We had one of UK's leading financial services hedge fund called Algebris. They also came in as an investor. But, 4 years into the business, we realized it wasn't doing as well.
I think the global finance meltdown also contributed to it, or
I would say it wasn't so much to do with the global financial meltdown. I would say it was more to do with the model. And look, we have no regrets there again. We said we're going to do the right things by the consumer. Think about it. A ULIP is a product, investment product masquerading as insurance, right? Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
High entry loads. So you paid your first premium was like, let's say, 1 lakh. Actually, 30 to 40% would get taken away as commission, by the agent. The remaining would get invested. So already you were down by 30-40%. It was a bad investment.
Right.
And over a 10-15 year period, your returns would be a middling 4-5%, and the insurance coverage would be very low. But people were selling it, and in a rising stock market, you would see some doubling of returns in 2 or 3 years and get very excited. We said that this is a bad product. We're not going to sell this. The right thing for a person is buy term insurance, which actually gives you the maximum coverage, and put money into basically an index fund, because it's very hard for anything to beat the index. If people had put money into an index fund back then, and if you look at it today, they would have got extraordinary returns, right? Look at what the Sensex has returned in 20 years, or the Nifty.
Yeah.
So we say we're going to do the right things by the consumer, not sell products which make us high commission, but charge for a financial plan, which people were unwilling to pay, unfortunately. So it did not work out too well. But anyways, why we picked real estate, to your question, because when we were creating these detailed financial plans for people, we realized that the first goal was to buy a home. And people were trying to save money to be able to put down the down payment on a mortgage, which would then allow them to buy a home. So we realized that in the hierarchy of goals, which most average Indian families had, buying real estate was a primary goal. So that's sort of what gave us the indication that, look, our financial services business is not working very well. But let's sort of pivot it and, move into real estate. Right. So we sold our business to Carvey and then got into real estate. But there's a very interesting anecdote I want to share with you.
Please.
Is that, when we were trying to sell our business, so we got introduced to Carvey, we got introduced to Motilal Oswal as well, right?
Yeah.
So luckily, through one of our friends, we got a 2-hour session with Motilal ji and Ramdev Agarwal, right? I mean, the founders of the firm. Yeah. And to their credit, we were a small little acquisition which they would have made, but they made the effort of spending 2 hours with us.
Yeah.
And, we made a very passionate pitch about the business we were doing, what we were doing for the consumer, the financial planning, etc., etc. Yeah. So I still remember, one comment which Motilal ji made at the end. He says, guys, I think what you're doing is fantastic, but just keep in mind what you're doing is great for the consumer, but bad for your business. That's when the penny dropped, right? That, we had just not figured out, the model properly, right? In terms of how to make money. Yeah. So anyway, so they didn't buy, but, Carvey bought the business. We exited. And then we sort of, launched Prop Tiger, because we realized that, real estate was a big pull product. At that time, today everybody's investing into direct equities, right? And doing day trading. Yeah. That time, even mutual funds, people had to be pushed into, right? Everybody today realizes the importance of insurance. That time it was still very early. And people really didn't think of insurance as a protection product, more like an investment product, as I mentioned to you. So I think, we said real estate is a pull product. Let's go into that, but with the same ethos that we're going to do the right thing for the consumer. That's something which never left us. We said, even if, what we heard, in terms of the feedback, from Motilal Oswal, that, the model's not right. I felt, yes, we have to rethink our model on the real estate side, but we're not going to let go of our fundamental premise and fundamental vision that we have to do the right thing by the consumer. Because real estate, as you realize, Hetal, is the largest purchase decision a family ever makes in its life, right?
Of course, no doubt about that.
Right? It's a purchase decision which you make at best once or twice in your life, if that,
Yeah.
right? And it's one of those purchase decisions where the cost of going wrong is very high, because being able to unwind a wrong decision
Yeah.
is very costly. It's very
Right.
high friction. You
Yeah.
can't just buy and sell. That's what I keep telling people. You
Exit
buy a
barriers are very high. Yeah.
sorry.
Exit barriers are very high.
There's a very high. Plus, it's one of those decisions where you're going to live in that, right? So the family gets involved. So it's a very emotionally charged decision. And again, just given how much mistrust was there in the sector at that point, RERA has done a great job of reducing the friction, the mistrust, but
Yeah.
it still remains, right?
Yeah.
So we said if we can do the right thing by the consumer, go in with that value system,
Yeah.
then we can actually make a big purchase decision, less bothersome, less hassle free, more enjoyable for the Indian family. Also realizing the fact that most people, right? I mean, you would know this, your parents' generation, my parents' generation, they barely managed to buy a home,
Yeah.
towards the end of their retirement, because that's when they managed to put enough money to be able to buy a home.
Yeah.
Right. But now people can actually, buy a home, when they're 27, 28 years old, right?
Yeah.
If,
Yeah.
if you're a dual income family, you can
Yeah.
do it maybe even sooner, right?
Yeah.
So most of the buyers are first time buyers.
Yeah.
There was no sort of real institutional memory that, okay, you know what, I can go to my dad and ask, ki kaise kharidte hain, right? Never.
Yeah.
There wasn't there. So we really felt the responsibility as a company to kind of handhold the consumer through this extremely difficult decision, as I mentioned.
And not a long time later, but right from the time when you were thinking about selling your venture, you were actually buying other ventures like housing.com and makan.com. So tell me one thing, I'm going to ask you a tough question, right? What is more difficult, to ensure you get the right price for your own venture, or to give the right price to a venture that you're trying to acquire?
I think if you ask me, it's again my personality type and it gets driven a little bit by that.
Yeah.
I think for me, the difficulty is always in paying the right price for the business, right? When it comes to my own business, like, look, as I said, I'm not a very hard nosed individual, or neither am I a very greedy person, right? I believe in doing the right thing, ensuring that my employees do well. I can share in the wealth that I create, etc. So I'm like, okay, you know what? It's all, selling a business is all about timing, because we can always, and in retrospect, it can look right, it can look wrong, and I can share that story with you as well when we sold to REA. But I always do believe that if someone's paying you cash for your business, take it, even if it's 10% lesser than what you think you could get. You negotiate hard, but at the same time, it's important that you be mindful that that thing may not come your way again. That opportunity. Buying a business, always hard, because I know it's tough when people are selling their businesses. They worked hard. You want to compensate them because you feel that they should get the right value, the work they've done. But at the same time, you have a fiduciary responsibility to your own company, to your investors, and you got to try and get the best deal. I find that always harder. Again, that's who I am as a person because of that. But look, I mean, I enjoy doing deals, both whether it's a sale of a division, or the sale of the business, or a purchase of a business. I like making deals, and we've been fairly successful, I would like to say, in terms of doing acquisitions, integrating them, and actually getting the benefit. Because as we know, very few M&As actually succeed, and there's a lot of work which needs to go in to ensure its success. But I think, all the M&A which we did, I mean, we did about 5 or 6, not all worked out very well.
Yeah.
But the biggest one which we did was housing, and that actually worked really well for us.
Right.
And I think even in terms of selling our business, when we sold the business to REA, I think it was perfect timing. My employees were very unhappy at that point in time because there were competing businesses in our space which raised money just 3 months, 4 months later at very, very high valuations. Now I think all of them realize that we did the right thing. I ensured that they got, paid well. Some of them made money which they otherwise wouldn't have dreamt of. And in retrospect, everyone's happy now, because many of those businesses which raised money at crazy valuations are struggling to grow into those valuations. And they never actually grow into those valuations.
Right. So after having, spearheaded 2 successful startups after being acquired by REA, your life took a sort of a back seat where you're not as active running a venture, but playing an instrumental role in bringing up other ventures. You got into angel investment, you got into mentoring as well. How has that journey been, moving from a fully active entrepreneurial journey more moving on to impacting many other startups and seeing those small buds grow into a lot of trees is the kind of, I won't use the word courage, but is the kind of decision making or diligence required far different, and is it as gravitating as running your own company?
So, Hedil, see, angel investing is actually one of those things which I would say is very tough. It's tougher than being an investor, like regular investor.
Okay.
As a VC fund or a professional institutional outfit, where you have the wherewithal, the resources, the time, the mandate also, right, to do the diligence, etc., before you make decisions.
Yeah.
As an angel, you absolutely don't, right? There are no committees which you go to. There are no sort of, opposing views. There's no debate, no discussion. Sometimes you do end up making instinctive calls, right? Based on
Yeah.
instinct, based on gut.
Yeah.
It's also your own money. So the fiduciary responsibilities, subconsciously in your mind is not there, which is there when, very strongly there when you're investing other people's money, right? So I think angel investing in that sense has to be thought through in a very disciplined way. And, it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
I've made a fair share of my mistakes. And now I've come to the conclusion that it's better to stay away from it because I just don't have the bandwidth. Most of my angel decisions have been, as I said, very sort of emotional slash instinctive. I've invested in, basically there was an unwritten rule when I was running housing and Makan and Prop Tiger that if anyone left the company to start a venture, I would back it. If I was very convinced, I would put in more money. If I wasn't convinced, I'd still put in enough money so that people would feel that, okay, you know what? The CEO of the company where they worked is backing the deal. So that's a great vote of confidence, right?
No doubt about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something which, people had the confidence that if we went to Dhruv, he would put in some money. Didn't matter how much it was, right? So sometimes I would put money based on that, not sort of financially the smartest approach, right?
Yeah.
Many a times I would put in money into folks who I knew, right? And I said, look, I know them. They've had good careers. They're smart people. They're honest people. Let's put in money. So angel investing sometimes tends to happen in that fashion. I think you need to create the same framework, the same guardrails, the same filters for investing which firms have. Like, it's very, very important to have those. Otherwise, I think it becomes more of, a fun project where you kind of put a few small checks and hope for the best. Now, I have been lucky in the sense a couple of my angel investments have done very well. But again, if I were to do the full math across, so I started doing angel investing actually way before I even exited. It was my first angel check I wrote back in 2010, actually.
Wow. That's
long
really
back.
Yeah.
Long back. And look, I was an early investor in Chai Point at that point in time. I did that. Another company called Authbridge, which does background screening services, etc.
Right. Yeah.
So I started long time ago. I haven't still exited those. So I always feel that with angel also the challenge is exiting, right?
Yeah.
When do you exit? Sometimes, you're also friends with the founders. So you're patient, right? I mean, so you're like, okay, fine, whenever it is. So, and then the other thing with angel investing is, I'm an operator, right? So I like to get my hands dirty. If I say, okay, you know what, this is not the right thing to do, I want to change it. But look, every entrepreneur, every founder is also like that. They have their own view of the world. They have their own beliefs in, what's the right strategy, what's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It can get frustrating sometimes. But look, why are you not doing this? But you can't influence it as an angel, right? You can influence it as an institutional investor, but not as an angel. So those are some of the challenges I've faced as an angel, not being able to, influence, get my hands dirty, and not really having a real, proper framework of filters to make the investment. And I believe it's the same with most people. Very few angels really, really, put the kind of rigor which institutions put in making investments.
Right. You mentioned about exits and difficult to get exits out of angel investment, but you found it a lot more easier to exit large companies, whether whether it was a fintech venture, whether it was Prop Tiger when it sold to REA, and now recently you left REA as well, right? So what was going on in your mind? What were the circumstances that led to leaving REA?
So look, I sold my company Hetal in 2020 December, and I had my earnouts baked in till 2023. So clearly, I had to stay back, for 3 years to realize full value for myself and for my team. even they were required to do the same. Then I felt the job was not finished in 2023. At one point, I told them actually in 2022 that I'm leaving. They tried to keep me back, but I said no. Somewhere along the way, because I had given them a 1 year notice, right? But somewhere along the way, I felt that I could have, maybe it was a little too early, and I went back and said, hey, look, if you guys haven't found anyone yet, I could reconsider my decision, and I did reconsider it and decided to stay back. But then around 2024 December, I genuinely felt that the time had come, for me to leave. I think for the initial 2-3 years, I kind of, set the tone, set the agenda, did things the way I wanted to do. And, the business really grew and did very well. And then, I also realized that at the end of the day that, I'm an entrepreneur, not a big company executive. So I felt that I would not do justice to the role in the way REA would expect it. Plus, I was getting bored, right? And I was like, look, I want to do something new. So I took the call. I told them that, look, I want to leave. I said that I'll leave only when you find a replacement. It's not that I'm in a tearing hurry. Yeah. So look, I told them in I think November of 2024, they found a replacement in July, and 1st August was my last day. So it all happened very smoothly. Still love the company, still very proud of what I built, still keep cheering the company on from the sidelines. So hopefully they keep the flag flying high. It was an amazing experience. I think, working with News Corp, working with REA, good investors to have, backed me all through. Look, I mean, we achieved a lot, especially since the acquisition happened. And I don't think we could have done it. I mean, I can take all the credit, or the team can take all the credit that, we did this, that, and the other. And we did. But I would like to give them equal credit for supporting us, because it's never easy, right? So it was a good journey, but I think it when is the right time to leave, right? So it was something that switch went on, and I said, okay, it's time.
So what you decided to do next has got something to do with what happened a couple of years back. So why don't you just take us through that phenomenal weight loss journey and what triggered the whole thing?
So for me, I would say, Hetal, I think it's been one of the most pivotal moments of my life. One of the most
very sobering as well.
From all respects, sobering, transformative, whatever you call it, right? I mean, I sometimes even find it difficult to use, words for it. But I'll share sort of a little bit of a history as well to give you more context and sort of more color, on this whole transformation. Look, I was always, an overweight kid, right? Not sort of obese, but overweight. I said I'd love to play sports, but never really excelled at it because I was overweight, right? So you got to be really fit. And then obviously you become a teenager, you lose weight, right? You want to look good, etc., etc. And then, I went to the US, everything stayed healthy, no issues with weight, etc. Came back to India, got married. I would say I was never thin, always on the, on the overweight side. People would look at me and say he's overweight. They would not say that he's normal, right? But not like what I had become, right? Before I started my transformative journey. Then I got married, but, I don't know what went wrong, but every year there was creep, 2 kilos plus, 2 kilos plus.
You don't want to give credit to your wife's cooking.
she if I do that, she'll say you're trying to transfer the blame now. So I won't say that. But
and it's too late, and it's too late in the day to start digging holes.
Exactly. The creep kept on happening, and then I realized suddenly I became like 130, 135 kilos. I was about 85 or 86 when I got married, right? And that became sort of my standard weight. I think I can't remember quite when, but I would say around maybe 2016 or 17, around that time frame, or maybe 15. I tried to lose weight. I lost more than 25 kilos. I tried low carb and this, that, and the other. And then, through my entire journey, I would try something or the other, right? There were so many fad diets out there. And I would lose some, but then put on weight, put all of that back, and maybe a few pounds even more. But I was still in my, 30s, 40s, right? I was able to manage. I never really felt that weight was holding me back in any way or a liability in any way, without knowing that how much it was actually. I didn't realize. So I would say the realization wasn't there, right?
Externally, you're not feeling it, right?
I was not feeling it, and even internally, I could pull, right? All the fatigue I would feel, everything I would say that, look, I'm working like crazy for like 12, 13 hours. So obviously I'm going to be tired, right? Then I think, so I sold my business in 2020, which I was 50. But December, I would be like maybe 6 months after 50. I'm April born, right?
Yeah.
So 2 or 3 years before that, right, I actually was in a situation where I thought I'm going to quit. And I, in fact, spoke to a couple of my friends, this, hey, you know what, I think I'm done. I'm leaving. I can't handle this anymore. I just can't do it. It was whether it was tiredness, mental fatigue, business was also not doing very great. So it was a combination of a lot of factors.
Yeah.
But I think that just my inner self, because of my being overweight, and by then I touched about 140-ish, right?
Hmm.
Very, very hard to deal with.
Hmm.
And but again, I could never get myself to quitting because I felt a lot of responsibility. But I can tell you, I was this close, and it all stemmed from my being overweight. The mental tiredness, the physical tiredness, the lack of confidence. I started having brain fog. So typically, I don't prepare for meetings very intensively, right? Just kind of quickly get a handle of what needs to be done,
Yeah.
said, and then I have the stories in my mind, and then I go and do it. Town halls as well, in front of people, like at, even when I left housing, we were 1,700 people. Mostly we were like 900 to 900 plus, right? So that was a number. Town halls didn't need to take notes or anything. But in that 2 year period, between like go say age 48 and 50, started having brain fog, needed notes in meetings, needed notes for town halls, started losing my confidence, didn't want to do it,
Mhm.
right? And but had to. So it was so much of effort to do these things, I can't even tell you. And then COVID happened. During COVID, I think we all got some, I would say, respite,
Yeah.
right? In a way. Everything came to a standstill in a way.
Yeah.
You didn't have to leave home. You were at home. There's time for reflection, more time to take it easy. Even if you were doing like innumerable calls, you were still not doing that 1.5 hour commute to Gurgaon and 1.5 hour back, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. So I would say things became a lot better for me, allowed me to kind of, ease out a bit. But I was paranoid during COVID because, obesity was a comorbidity which was actually killing people. It was real. It wasn't some, invented fact, right?
Yeah.
Or a figment of one's imagination. It was real. So
Yeah.
I was paranoid, not leaving my home to the extent where I was doing all the crazy things everybody was doing, washing vegetables, keeping stuff outside,
Yeah.
putting them under a light.
Allowing Ali's.
Yeah, whatever. We all did all of that crap, right?
Yeah.
Then in November that year, this was 2020, we were almost concluding the transaction with REA, but I had the opportunity of going to the US. Flights had opened up, etc. So I went to the US and then went to Singapore because I was employed in Singapore. I would do the back and forth. And I concluded the transaction in December of 2020. That's when, my wife told me, she said, look, Dhruv, you always said that when you sell your company, you'll have the time and you'll, work on your health. What better a time than this, right? We are all working remotely. You've sold the company, stress is over. Now you're a CEO, still a lot of responsibility, but
Hmm.
now you're not accountable for salaries of 1,700 people, right? There's a much bigger company with a multi-billion-dollar balance sheet responsible for that, right? Big difference, right? I mean, I worked as hard post that, and I was as accountable as that.
Yeah.
But that thing that, look, I am the one responsible for the paycheck.
Yeah.
I think fear and burden, I think, went off my head, which made a big difference. And that, I think, was a bit of a moment of self-reflection. And I said, look, I'm going to do it. And then I said, look, whatever went wrong in the past in all my weight loss journeys, I'm going to fix that. And that's sort of, when I kind of, got into it. And I was relentless for 18 months. I still remember, it's a bit of a funny anecdote.
Yeah.
This was 15th of February. I was sitting with a few friends in Singapore, having a few scotches, and eating everything, right, without being mindful. And I said, guys, from tomorrow, I'm starting my weight loss journey. I'm going to this gym. It's called Ultimate Performance.
Yeah.
They promise body transformations. Tomorrow is my first day.
Yeah.
Like, look, you're kidding us. Look what you're doing tonight, right? I mean, you're down 6 or 7 drinks.
Yeah.
You've been eating everything which has been put in front of you. How are you going to do it? They
Yeah.
all laughed at me, right?
Yeah.
Because they're like, this guy. And what I didn't mention to you was I used to be 135, 140 during COVID because I was at home and cooking up a storm. I'm a foodie, as I said.
Yeah.
I'd become 152 kilos, 151.7 to be precise, is what I weighed in on February 16th, 2021, when I went to Ultimate Performance, right?
Yeah. Did they
And
charge you double for that?
they should have. They should have. You know, there was a bit of a sticker shock, Hetal, coming
Yeah.
from India. Guess how much each session was for? At that point in time, each session, gym session for an hour, was 220 Singapore dollars.
What do they do for so much money?
That's my point. So I told the guy, I'm like, 220 bucks, what are you talking, right? I mean,
You had to starve yourself.
exactly. And I said, look, every weight loss
If,
effort I made in
if
my
there was a
past,
full course meal at the end of the session, it was worthwhile, I
it was
guess.
worthwhile. So he said, listen, Dhruv, at the end of the day, what
The
you're going to
Bhatia
find.
Dimag works everywhere.
No, absolutely, it was working. My question was that, so he kind of countered that. He
Huh.
said, look, as part of this program, no alcohol. You're going to save money on that. How much do you spend every week on alcohol? Tell me that. How often do you go out to restaurants and what do you eat? Tell me that. He said, I can prove it to you that you will spend less and you'll actually be the better for it. So he was a
Yeah.
bigger bunny than I was, right? So anyways, cut a long story short,
Yeah.
I started on that journey, and for 18 months I was relentless.
So
Uh,
what was your schedule like? You were just spending 1 hour in the gym. That's it.
so first thing, very basic, right? So I started 151.7 kilos. They said that, Dhruv, you know what? There's only one thing which works for weight loss. Forget about everything else.
Yeah.
If you want to lose weight, there's only one thing which works. And that is you have to burn more than you consume. There is no other mantra to weight loss. They said fat diets, low carbs, you sort of lose glycogen stores very quickly. So you lose weight, glycogen, attaches itself to water. So water weight gets lost. And guess what? The day you start eating carbs, glycogen comes back, attached water comes back, and you're back to your normal weight, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
fat diets don't work. All of these things, General Motors used to be one big thing in India. You eat one
Yeah.
type of food every day.
Yeah.
Doesn't
Yeah.
matter how much you eat. So their point was nothing works. The only thing which works is science. That is, you burn more than you consume.
Yeah.
Energy mass balance. And being an engineer, I was like, yeah, you know what? I can't controvert or deny that reality, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was one thing which they just ingrained in my head. The second thing they ingrained in my head was that, okay, now that you understand that this deficit, this calorie deficit, which means you're consuming less than you burn, needs to be measured, right? Otherwise, how do we know? So you got to measure what you're eating, and then you got to kind of, measure what you're burning. I said, fair enough. And then my old G learning, kicked in that, Peter Drucker said this first and then G adopted it. Folks like
Yeah.
Larry Bossidy, everybody said the same thing. And that's what we were told, that
Yeah.
you manage what you measure, right? If you're not measuring it, you're not managing it,
Of
right?
course, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I became a calorie counting hound. They had their own app, at the gym,
Yeah.
Ultimate Performance, where you would enter the foods you ate, and your trainer would get a view into that.
Yeah.
He would enter the exercise I was doing and estimating the burn. And then I was walking about 5,000 steps. For me, 5,000 steps a day that time was huge, because I was so big. My basal metabolic rate was probably around 2,500 anyways. So in that sense, at rest I was burning quite a bit of calories, and then I just added that stuff. So for me, the regime was eat less than 1,700 calories every day and go to the gym 3 times a week, get the
Okay.
hour each, where again it was not like heavy weightlifting in the beginning, because he said you can't do it because you're so heavy. So it's
Yeah.
more about doing basic squats, using some of your own body weight to do very basic stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
One
Yeah.
big thing which they made me do was the crawler. I don't know whether you're familiar.
Yeah.
You push that thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like the
It's
cart.
popular in Hyrox.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
basically like a cart without wheels, right? And
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
you pile up weight and you move that back and forth. Very
Yeah.
exhausting, but great to burn calories. So stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And then the walk, right? They said, look, just do 5,000 steps every day and you're
Yeah.
in good shape. And believe it or not, Hedel, I consistently dropped about a kilo and a half, every week. There were plateaus, but those plateaus wouldn't last for more than 2 weeks. So it kept on going down progressively. I started getting compliments from people. They are looking great. I started realizing I could now buy stuff which I couldn't buy before. I've always, before that, my transformation for the previous 15 years, I've only shopped at, big and tall stores or DXL store. I could not buy anything off the shelf anywhere. Then I started realizing I could do that. I changed my wardrobe 4 times during the journey, by the way, right? That made me feel really good again, that look, I'm being able to buy stuff at regular stores. I can buy nicer clothes.
Yeah.
The compliments started coming in. In fact, a lot of people started asking me for Gyan, how are you doing it? That now I suddenly became a fitness guru from being the unhealthiest person. So I think
Yeah.
that kind of just, egged me on. I was relentless. 18 months, came down from 151.7, I weighed into 79 point X kilos, whatever it was, but under 80, right? Almost half my body weight. And I can't begin to tell you how I felt, right? Mental clarity returned, brain fog disappeared, confidence became 3x. That coincided also with the best years for our business. People would see me as a sharp leader at work. At a sales conference, I remember internal, I said, guys, if I can do this, guess what? Any growth number which I tell you, you can
Yeah.
deliver. And there was that confidence right in the room
Yeah.
because they were finally looking up at a leader who was not sort of
Walk the talk. Yeah.
can walk the talk, right? So I think that made a big difference. So I think the point you started out the conversation with about how mental health is
Yeah.
equally important, if not more than physical health, is actually the thing,
Yeah.
right? I realized
Yeah.
that how I change as an individual.
Yeah.
One big realization. I told you that when I was in my 30s or 40s, I never
Yeah.
considered weight as my liability.
Yeah.
I realized when I was speaking, when I had lost weight, looked
Yeah.
sharper, people were taking me more seriously, right? Than they took me before. And
Yeah.
that's a reality which none of us want to accept, right?
True.
But I remember reading a book when I was even in my earlier days, right? It's,
Yeah.
it's, it's a book which is my favorite book, by the way. If you haven't read it, it's a must read. It's called Influence, The
Oh, yeah.
Psychology of Persuasion
Yeah.
by
Vinny.
Robert Cialdini. I'm sure you've read it, right?
Yeah.
On
Yeah.
Munger's reading list as well.
Yeah.
There he talks about the fact that humans take shortcuts to make decisions. We don't have the time to analyze everything.
Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
you're actually meeting new people, you make mental shortcuts to judge them, right? And there, how you look, your appearance, etc., all of those things count, right? So I think
Yeah.
weight is one of those things where I felt that,
Mm.
might have been holding me back in the past, never realized it.
Yeah.
But I realized that when I actually lost it,
Hmm.
how I was being perceived. The
Right.
energy I brought into the room, the alertness I brought into to a meeting, the clarity of thought, the confidence, all changed, right?
Right.
So for me, that's I think been truly transformative in terms of who I am as a person. What I've been able to do post that, and I
Hmm.
clearly see this as a big achievement because I feel for people who are overweight. I see many. I get on LinkedIn so many times, and I've been putting a few posts in recent times around my weight loss journey because I feel
Yeah.
that it's important to share what I went through. It'll only
Yeah.
benefit people, and I've been fairly candid. There's nothing to hide.
Of course.
People reach out to me and they're desperate, and I can understand the desperation because I've been through that, and I keep telling them that, guys, don't give up, because I did
Hmm.
it when I was 51. And
Yeah.
believe me, when the change happens,
Yeah.
you will feel like it's like rebirth. You're
Yeah.
born again, right?
Very true.
So hopefully I can motivate more people through
Yeah.
my journey, now that I'm putting it out there through
Yeah.
my LinkedIn posts. Hopefully more people can benefit, more people are open about asking questions and taking advice. So we'll see how it goes. But that's sort of what prompted me also at one level to
Yeah.
leave and do something in this space, right?
Yeah.
So that's sort of where I am.
But moving from a foodie to a food calorie counter must have been tough. Was the reverse also tough? Did you have a tough time getting back to your regular food habits, or they never went back to what it used to be? And now
Look,
you're.
I'm still a foodie at heart. My friends still say that you're the same Dhruv, in a different body at the
Uh-huh.
moment. I'm very passionate. Every time I go somewhere, I'll pick out the best restaurant, the best dish on the menu, etc.
Hmm.
But what's changed is that at the same time, I'll be the first one to say, okay, what, this is the hike we are going to do, or we're going to do the run in the morning, we're going to do
Yeah.
this or do that. So now I've started
Yeah.
to marry activity with food. So I haven't
Yeah.
given up my old passion. I've just added on stuff, which is a great counter to the indulgences which I sometimes, engage in. So in that sense, look, I've never reverted back to my old habits, but bad habits are different from, stop becoming a foodie, right?
Yeah.
Don't need to. Why would you give up food? Food is
Hmm.
something meant to be enjoyed, right? It's a
Yeah.
passion.
Yeah.
The question
True.
is, how do you manage it? How do you change your relationship with it? So previously, food for me was also a crutch when I was, stressed. It
Yeah.
was also something which was, there when you had to celebrate. It was also something there when you were with people. So it was there everywhere.
Yeah.
Now it's different, right? Food's meant to be enjoyed, but there are different ways for, like, when I'm in Singapore, many times I meet friends who I haven't met in a long time. So one approach is to meet them for dinner or lunch. One
Yeah.
approach is, why don't we go for a morning walk? So you actually get an hour with them.
Very true. Yeah. Yeah.
You're exercising is quality time because you're focused only on chatting, right? As opposed to
Yeah.
the food.
Yeah.
And guess what? You've not consumed unhealthy calories. You've burnt calories.
Yeah.
You spend time with the individual. It achieves the same purpose, right?
Yeah.
So I think you just got to figure out some hacks, rewire the way you live your life, and you can continue being a foodie, continue enjoying us whatever old passions,
Yeah.
and yet not put on weight.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think one of the common things I've observed being 50 plus is that breakfast invites are more easy than dinner invites. Walking meetings are better than just sitting and talking. Whether you are able to have common passions like running or cycling or swimming, the acceptance for health has gone up a lot.
Lot,
I think in the
yes.
entire entrepreneurial world. So I was thinking about the time period of your entrepreneurial journey and when you were not able to spend time on your health. And now you look at some of the leading entrepreneurs in India, whether it's Nitin Kamath, whether it's Vinder Goyal,
Yeah.
they're all letting health first as an objective. It's not just about their personal regime, but their entire business decision. I mean, why would Dipinder Goyal talk about temple and all those things? It's simply because they reverse the whole story about, you know, when you're an entrepreneur, you work 24/7, slog yourself. I think that whole story is now moving past.
So,
And
so it's changed. I agree with you, Hital. So, one of the posts I put on LinkedIn,
yeah,
I wrote exactly this, what you just said. So
yeah,
for me, or for people in general, right?
yeah,
People talk about, work-life balance,
yeah,
where they say, okay, you got to kind of try and find a balance between work and life. Life is defined as family many, many a times, right?
yeah,
And people forget about themselves. Either you are at work, quote unquote, working for your boss, or
yeah,
you're working, for your family. You forget about yourself.
yeah,
So I said that you've got to change the paradigm. Firstly, you've got to add yourself and then flip the order. I
yeah,
said, you come first as an individual
yeah,
and you do the right thing for yourself, for your physical health, for your mental health, for your spiritual health, whatever you are as an individual.
yeah,
You got to be in the finest form, in fine
yeah,
fettle.
right,
Once you're that, and you got to carve out time for that first, right?
yeah,
Then you're more present with your family. See, the family doesn't expect you to be with them for hours.
yeah,
They want you to be present when you are there with them, not be on that phone, not be distracted,
yeah.
not be sort of think, have your mind somewhere else. And kids especially can tell that when
Oh,
dad
yeah,
sort of
very true.
are there but not there, it's easy for them, right? I've been guilty of that on several occasions in the past, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Then I realized, what? Once you're present and more sort
yeah,
of, confident because you are in, in the best mental health, you are in the best physical health, then you're more present with them. And once you're
yeah,
more present with your family feels that they're getting enough of you.
yeah,
That's when you have enough time to be at work as well. And at work, then you're not thinking about, oh, you know what, I didn't spend time with my family, or you don't feel guilty. And then
yeah,
you're more productive at work, more present at work, more there for your team as well, right?
yeah,
So I
yeah,
think it has to start from yourself and
yeah,
then layer up upwards, not the other way that, look, first you say, okay, you know what, I'm going to carve out time for work, then I'm going to carve out time for family, and then for
yeah,
myself. It is
yeah,
absolutely the wrong thing. It's got
yeah,
to just be flipped on its back. So I think
yeah,
I'm glad that the whole entrepreneurial ecosystem has realized that and
yeah,
is encouraging that, because unfortunately what happens is things of 24/7 work, etc., working very hard, they become urban legends, right?
yeah,
And then then they get perpetuated by young founders. They're like, oh, you got to work hard, don't you realize that? And then they're like mean to their employees. But imagine if they say, hey, no, guys, you got to go take time for yourself.
yeah,
We are going to promote your personal well-being. And
correct.
if you're in fine fettle, go spend time with your family and then be more productive at work.
Yeah,
I think we're going to be a much better world and far more productive. So I'm glad
definitely.
it's happening, what you
Definitely.
mentioned.
And I think it's easier to prioritize yourself if both the ecosystem, the work and the family, understands your lingua, right?
Correct.
So at work, it could be, how the HR is encouraging, go
Exactly.
participate in the local run with your team members, with your colleagues. What works in the family is if your spouse and your kids are understanding the lingua or maybe are already ahead of you in the health journey. So for me, it was beautiful to have my daughter taking interest in swimming early on and becoming a national champion.
Oh,
So we
wow.
used to enjoy the gym sessions together. So it was not about, I would not feel guilty about heading out to the gym because they all related to it, right? So it
No,
became easy.
you're right. Like, for example, now, obviously I'm 56, my wife's over 50, and, kids are out of the house.
Yeah,
So we do these trips very often, which
yeah,
all revolve around hiking or physical activity.
yeah, yeah,
Because we both enjoy doing it, it's become
yeah,
so much more easier. Otherwise, if you're right, if your spouse has different interests,
yeah,
then it can become more challenging.
yeah, yeah. And in the running circle, there's common terminology called runnication, where the guy wants to, or the guy or the husband or the wife want to travel for a marathon, and they're feeling guilty about traveling alone, so they tag the family along. That's
Ah,
still okay,
yeah.
because but what if the spouse is also running, right? Then it's like
It's
sone
even
pe
better.
suhag.
Then there's no thought. Then it becomes, yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's fair.
So did this set the ground for your interest in your next venture, which has got related to nutrition?
No, absolutely, Hetal. So, for me, as I went through my journey, right, over 18 months, I realized that there was a lot of reading I had to do, a lot of hacks, a lot of sort of understanding truly, what different foods meant, what they did to you. First 18 months was all about weight loss. Then it was
Yeah,
about saying, okay, you know what, I became a little nutrient deficient. I had some muscle loss, how to put that muscle back on, etc., etc. So a lot of research around that, which gave me a good insight into nutrition, supplementation. I know there's so much of noise around protein, all of that, right? So I felt that a venture in this space would allow me to kind of share my learnings with people, bring to a sort of broader audience what I had learned,
yeah,
with all the people asking me about what to do, what not to do. You can only impact few people if you do it yourself as
yeah,
an individual. The surface area of the impact can grow much wider if you
yeah,
do it as an enterprise. And look, again, I'm not here just to kind of build yet another venture and then everything else. I'm here to build a venture where I feel I can, continue down a path which I've chosen for myself a few years ago.
yeah,
Allows me to stay healthy, allows me to stay at the cutting edge of what's out there, and at the same time sort of share my learnings with a broader set of people. Obviously it's a very crowded space, lots of
yeah,
people doing different things,
yeah,
but that's with any space. But I just think that the even if as a hard-nosed business person,
yeah,
I think the opportunity for this is enormous. We're barely scratching the surface in India, and I think like FMCG companies are going to see a lot of. I mean, look at the last 30, 40 days. So many transactions in the protein slash vitamin space, right? I
yeah,
think this is only going to grow. What we are trying to do is more about behavioral change, habit formations, being able to use the right nutrition first, right,
yeah,
to fix your health, and then wherever it's challenging,
yeah,
then obviously use supplementation, but focused a lot more on people who are sort of slightly older,
yeah.
struggling with weight, struggling with various other issues, because that's something which I relate to a lot more, and that's where I also bring a little bit more credibility. So that's sort of what I'm thinking.
Another segment which has been critical or important is education. As part of the Harvard's South Asia Board advisory, and being early stages of Ashoka, you've made a significant contribution in education. What has been that journey like, and what has that taught you?
It's all about giving back at the end of the day. I've had been fortunate enough to have world class education. Look, Ashoka, frankly, while I've been involved from the early days, it used to be called the Young India Fellowship. That evolved into, which was a 1 year program, non degree, which evolved into Ashoka University, etc. So Ashish Dhawan, who kind of, one of the, big sort of drivers, behind Ashoka. I know him from, because we both are from Calcutta. That's how I know him. He went to Harvard Business School. I went there, so we
Yeah,
met through the Harvard network, became friends, had lots of common friends.
yeah,
So kind of when he shared his vision of Ashoka with me, it kind of resonated when he said, "Look, we want to build the Yale, Princeton, Harvard of India, and we think we can do it." And I, having been to the US, was a firm believer that at the end of the day, liberal education is far more valuable than just being very specialized. And
yeah,
today's day and age of AI, I think that liberal education becomes even more important, right? So I think the vision resonated with me. So when Ashish said, "Hey, you want to be involved?" I was like, "Sure." So there was obviously monetary contribution in the early days, time contribution. And I've been engaged, with him and the university, since.
Yeah.
In fact, at the moment also, now that I'm out of this business, he's been asking me to increase my engagement. So I might just kind of, do that as well.
Mm.
But it's always rewarding because, interacting with young people, bright young minds, as they are aspiring and looking forward to their lives,
Yeah.
is always very energizing for me. It makes me feel younger, makes me feel sort of more youthful. So for me, if given a choice, a lot of people like spending time with older people, wiser people, smarter people. I like spending time with people who are younger,
Same here.
who very bright, but then they truly ask you the questions which challenge you
The
because they
unknown.
don't care who you are.
Yeah.
They are not trying to, even if they are smarter than you, sometimes, older people, they want to not upset you, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
younger people always challenge you. They don't hold back, right? And they really, really leave a lot of food for thought after every interaction, which makes you a
Yeah.
better person.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason why I've been involved at Ashoka. And look, I mean, it's while I've played a very, very tiny role. It's really amazing to see where the university has come in such a short period of time. So that's
Yeah.
that's pretty amazing. Look, the Harvard South Asia Advisory Board is more about staying engaged, with the university. I think Harvard does a great job of that, involving alumni. But there again, I felt that a lot of the good things which have happened to me in life and business have
Yeah.
been as a result of my Harvard association.
Yeah.
Not what I learned there, but
Mhm.
through network of friends I built there and professors. In my first venture,
Yeah.
there was 3 Harvard professors who actually put in money. There was Tarun Khanna, there was Andre Parole, Arthur Siegel. It's
Yeah.
very, very heartening to see your professors put in money. My early angels, Ashish Dhawan, Sidio, guys again,
Yeah.
Harvard Network, Harvard Business School Network. So I think it really helped. So
Yeah.
obviously, there is a responsibility and a desire,
Yeah.
to kind of give back in whatever way I can.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my engagement. And as I said, when I was younger, I was always more academically inclined. Almost ended up doing my PhD. So being involved with universities, right,
Yeah.
I think is a great way of at least vicariously, living through that unfinished sort of dream of doing the PhD.
Did I hear that? Are you looking at completing your PhD at
No,
some
no,
point?
no, no, no. There's a way of, it keeps coming to me at some point that, do
It
it.
should. It should.
I don't think I can complete it in that subject. Maybe something else. Who knows? Maybe in functional medicine or nutrition or whatever.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
never know.
Yeah.
So, but
It's
but
true.
no imminent plans, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah. So what's coming up next? What's keeping you going right now? Any Uber goals? Any big plans?
From a personal standpoint, I think one of the things I always tell people, they always ask me about, you maintained your weight or whatever. How do you do that? So, as you would know, Hetal, right? With your own fitness journey and your fitness achievements, that you can keep raising the bar, right?
Definitely, no doubt about that.
And as long as you keep raising the bar and keep setting higher and higher goals,
Yeah.
I think then maintenance is not hard because then you're only trying to achieve more and more on the health side. So
Yeah.
that's one
Yeah.
thing which I'm very particular about. Right now, I'm focusing a little bit more on how do I increase muscle mass while reducing fat.
Yeah.
At my age, not non-trivial, but a good goal to have. So I'm,
Yeah.
I'm focused on that. Look, I finished my role at REA on 1st of August. So I've taken a lot of the time since then to now to travel a bit,
Yeah.
of course, formulate the thoughts of the new venture in my head,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
Now I think what I've told myself is, starting 1st of April, I'll put in some real time to taking the thought and idea and passion into a real venture.
Right.
Start having conversations with potential, teammates, founders, etc., to get things off the ground.
You mentioned about Cialdini. Any other books that stayed with you, influenced you a lot in terms of what you became today? Anything
Yeah,
that
so
you
look, I
recommend?
would say, another book which I've always enjoyed is, Naval Ravikant's
Almanac.
Almanac
Yeah.
of Naval Ravikant, although not
Yeah.
written by him, but sort
Yeah.
of an anthology of his tweets, etc. I think his is a very it's amazing, that book. Actually, if you ask me, this whole thought about, which I shared earlier in the discussion as well.
Yeah.
There's always someone who's going to be richer than you. So he talks about, playing the hierarchy game or the happiness game. What are you playing, right? If you're
Yeah.
playing the hierarchy game, you'll never be happy because there'll always be someone who's
Yeah.
above you, right? But
Very
if you
true.
play the happiness game, then it's very different. then you can be happy with what you have, right? And happiness, and look, it goes back to what I told you about the Gita, right?
Yeah.
It says detachment from the fruits doesn't mean it's inaction.
Yeah.
So if you detach yourself from the fruit, but kind of, attach yourself to the action, which is your duty,
Yeah.
then you're going to be happy, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so in that sense, he brings a lot of ancient wisdom as well into sort of
Yeah.
modern writing, which I
Yeah.
think people relate to more, right? Because some people are
Yeah.
like, look, I don't want to go to the ancient text. I want to read which is more current. So he
Yeah.
does that. What else? I think Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, I love his quote. He says, right, between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is your
Decision or what
yeah,
action you take.
your power to choose your response, right?
Yes.
And in that response lies your growth and freedom. I think that's
Right.
absolutely brilliant, right? I
Right.
think so he's someone again who kind of I think about. Yeah, so here's some of the things which I would encourage people to read, because I think it allows for self-reflection, allows people to think about how they're leading their lives. Because I think success at the end of the day, is how happy you are, right?
Yeah.
And some of these books actually allow you to kind of think about that, right?
Yeah. That's
So
true. Ready for a rapid fire?
I'm not good at these, but we'll still try.
Okay. Where are you most at home, Singapore or India?
Honest Singapore. I tell you why. Can
Yeah.
I say that?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I know
Sure.
a lot of people are going to not be happy about that answer.
Yeah.
Because that's where I became a new person. It was my place of
A
rebirth. Right?
transformative journey.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Work culture, US or India or Singapore, if you want to add.
US,
Bollywood or Hollywood?
Bollywood,
Movies or OTT?
movies,
If a young entrepreneur wants to start a business in India, fintech or real estate?
fintech,
And if you had to choose one sport which you would have wanted to start, which would it be?
squash.
And have you got into it now?
No, I played a lot of squash before, so that's something which
Get into something significant. You
no,
lost.
not yeah, not significant.
Right. Now's the favorite question. What's the question you have for me?
So Hedel, you got to tell me, right, what motivated you to become the Iron Man that you did become?
So I think there are two parts to it, right? The first part is very straightforward and simple. I started running in 2013, and when you start running, you sign up for events. Sometimes you travel for running events, and you do 5K, 10K, half marathon, full marathon. And once you start doing multiple marathons, there's a kind of a boringness or a platitude comes as far as running is concerned, because you can keep chasing getting a better PB, trying run different terrains, you go after more tougher marathons and so on and so forth. But at some point of time, you need to decide whether you want to go the ultra way, which is go beyond the 42.2 kilometer, or you get into some other sports and kind of low down the impact of running. So I chose the triathlon way. I realized that triathlon as a sport has a multitude of sports, and a lot of people don't realize it, but that's a secret to why triathlons are actually easier than ultra marathons, is because the swim, cycle, run, there are different parts of the body getting exercised.
Yes.
So while I'm doing these three routines back to back, different parts of the body are getting used. So it's pure
Were you
mental.
a swimmer before? Were you a swimmer before?
I've been swimming since I was 6 years old. So in fact, it's funny you asked, but swimming was my first love. Even before I got into running, I used to swim a lot during school days, and that stayed with me. And I was never like a very fast swimmer, but I used to love getting into the water. In fact, it's funny we're talking. I did a 2K swim in the pool this morning, and I felt so refreshed. And I was realizing the wow part that despite me having run far more, despite me having bike far more, I still find joy when I get out of the pool, and that's unparalleled. So that's how the transition moved from running to triathlons. And the reason why triathlons have stayed with me is for the very same reason, because when I have to choose a whole week, I have three different activities. When I'm running, I can just play around with different styles of running. You can do an interval, or you can do a hill repeat, or you can do a tempo run or a long run. But it's the same part of your body, which are your legs getting used, and the other subtle part is that I have meniscus tear in both my knees. So I somehow took a conscious decision that if I want to run for a very long time in my life, I need to reduce the quantum of running I do. And in fact, last year my running mileage was an all-time shocker. I think I ran less than 500 kilometers in the entire year. Whereas I know some of my friends who have run like 300 kilometers in a month.
Wow.
And they've done it some of them actually run 3,500 kilometers in the whole year, right? So, and maybe this year might go.
every day, pretty much.
So that's how I think it's been, and the joy you get out of multiple different activities, and it's a little complicated as well. I need to make sure I have a bike in place, wherever I'm traveling. If I don't have a bike, then I can't actually just cycle the way I want to. So running is far more easier. I mean, now with barefoot running, you don't even need shoes, right? You just step out and start running.
No,
But yeah,
the reason why I asked you, Hidal, was because that's one thing I've always sort of, I've been envious of people who manage to do that.
yeah,
Because as you said, right, to be able to do three sort of endurance sports
yeah,
is not easy. And that's something which, I think it's a discussion for another day when I meet you in
definitely.
person.
Yeah,
If I ever wanted to give it a shot,
yeah.
what would be the best way to go about it?
Oh, I would love to guide you on that. I think
Yeah.
that's and I'm sure with the kind of transformation you've gone through, it's gonna be easy. I think swimming, right?
I mean, I know swimming. I'm not a great swimmer.
That's
So
enough.
I just need some technical help
Yeah,
to
yeah.
get my technique better.
You would be surprised the number of people I come across. यार मुझे स्विमिंग नहीं आती. I'm like 50 के ऊपर स्विमिंग नहीं आती. I'm like
No,
so
no, no.
that
I
can be a
used to
bigger
swim,
hurdle.
but I was a bad swimmer. So as I said, I probably dabbled in everything and
Yeah,
never
yeah.
excelled at a sport. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. So it's a pleasure talking to you, Dhruv. Officially, the longest ever podcast I've ever recorded. So
Oh, okay. No, sorry, because I do tend to take
yeah,
time to answer questions, but
yeah.
feel free to edit, the way you want to.
No problem. I normally like a free flow format. So this has been great. Thanks a lot for your time and I appreciate the same.
No, no, no. Thanks, Hetal. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it myself, and I do look forward to staying in touch with you
Yeah,
and meeting you in person.
we should be doing that for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, Hetal. Thank you.